Welcome one and welcome all. Welcome back to the Breakthrough You podcast. I'm your host, Coach Molly from Three Pines Leadership, and thank you for joining me for this episode. Whew. This podcast is all about creating massive change in our life by doing very simple activities. Very simple challenges each week that might take 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes max out of your day, but are going to, when you stack them up and you focus on the consistency, you're going to see that massive change. Usually I start every episode by asking you to set your goals in 3 different areas. First, health. Second, wealth. Third, relationships. Today, this week's challenge focuses on all of them and so much more. I'm just going to dive straight into this week's challenge. But first, I want to invite you to share I want you to share this week's challenge and this week's insights with me on my social media platform. So connect with me on Twitter at Coach Molly with an E, or on Instagram at 3_pines_leadership, or on Facebook. Connect with me. I want to know how this challenge is going for you, because it's very different than the challenges we usually do on this podcast. Yeah. The theme for today is forgiving yourself. Here we go. So maybe you messed up in high school and you ended up not getting the grades you wanted and ended up at a school that wasn't ideal in your eyes. Or maybe you chickened out and you didn't ask out the pretty lady at your first job. Or maybe you let down a friend. Or maybe you went bankrupt with your latest business venture. Or maybe you gained more weight than you were comfortable gaining. We've all done and said things that we regret. And we've ended up in situations where we look around and we wonder how you ended up there in the first place. And then you're riddled with feelings of guilt and shame. And you don't want to talk about these things to your friends, so you bottle them up and they get worse and they start to fester. And if we're not going to address them, then we're not going to be able to move forward, right? And we end up letting those situations define who we are. If we messed up in high school and didn't get good enough grades and ended up at a school that wasn't ideal in our eyes, then we tell ourselves that we're failures, and we tell ourselves that we're not good enough or we're not smart enough. Yet it's been 20 years since that happened, and you've learned a heck of a lot since then. But why aren't you giving yourself credit for that? We've all failed to do things that we now sit back and see them as regrets. And there's no fixing the past. As much as I would love there to be time machines, we can't go back and fix the past. So the only solution, my friends, is to forgive yourself. To truly, truly forgive yourself and move forward from that feeling of guilt or regret. What I want you to do instead, that's this week's challenge, is really deep and very personal. So I want you to make a list of your biggest regrets. And then I want you to let them go. You're more of a capable person now. And you've learned your lesson. Maybe you learned it 2 days after the situation happened, or maybe it took a few years for you to gain that perspective. But the point is, we can't change the past, so we have to accept where we are now and understand that there were lessons that we learned. Maybe we learned that we had to focus a little bit more, or maybe we learned that we're braver than we think we are. Maybe we learned that there's different ways to approach people, and the one that I chose was not the right one. You are so much more capable. You have learned so many incredible lessons since that regret, or because of that regret. There's nothing at all that you can gain by beating yourself up. Nothing at all. So when I was younger, I learned this really fantastic way of helping me let go of those regrets that I want to share with you. Maybe it'll help you. I don't know. What we did was we wrote down our fears and our regrets onto these plates that we got at the thrift store. Some people decided that they were going to make their plates really fancy and draw all these designs on them, and others were going to write their fears and regrets and anxieties really big and bold. And I and a couple other people chose to write essays about our fears and regrets. And then what we did was we smashed them. Some people dropped them off the second story of the school, and others decided to hit them with baseball bats or throw them really hard at the wall. But it was the visualization and the physicality of the smashing of those regrets and those fears. That was this fantastic process for us to go through. And maybe if you're the kind of person who likes to smash things up and get kind of your aggression and whatnot out in that way, I can't recommend this any higher for you. So this week, I want you to do that deep dive. I want you to look at what you regret, what's holding you back, what you are holding yourself back from. And then I want you to get rid of them. I want you to let that go. If that means smashing it, if that means writing it in a balloon and letting it go, I want you to find a way to rid yourself of that, to move on, to thank yourself for having the insight and perspective to learn from those mistakes, to learn from those regrets, and to say, you know what? Every decision I have ever made has helped me become who I am. Maybe you've had to learn the lesson the hard way. Maybe it wasn't the best decision or the best lesson to have learned, but you learned it. You learned it. As I like to say, there is no one else in the world who is as uniquely positioned as you are, with your experiences, your knowledge, your skills, all of that. Nobody else in the world has your unique perspective on life. And this activity is going to help you dive deeper and recognize the richness of that perspective. So that's it. Seems really simple, but it's going to be an emotional deep dive, and I highly, highly encourage you to do this. This is going to propel you forward in so many ways you never thought possible. By recognizing that we are holding ourselves back, by recognizing it and finding a way to let go of that, you'll be recognizing that there are so many different obstacles and blocks that you've put in your own way. So let's get rid of them. Let's move forward. I can't help you find them or figure them out because you're the one who has experienced them. You're the one who's holding them inside of you and letting those past decisions determine how you're going to move forward in the future. So let go of them. It's that simple. Guys, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Breakthrough You podcast. I'm your host, Coach Molly from Three Pines Leadership. And remember, you can find all of the Three Pines podcasts, the Lifelong podcast, the Breakthrough You podcast, the Business Building Book Club, all of the Three Pines podcasts. You can find them on all of your favorite podcast platforms and, of course, in video format on the Three Pines Leadership YouTube page. Guys, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I will see you again next week for a new challenge. It won't be as emotionally deep. I promise next week. I'll give you a bit of a break. So until next time, my friends, remember, I love you, and be excellent to each other. Bye for now.